Today, the banks are treating regional Australians like second-class citizens. Hi again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Our latest post covering finance and prop news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Well, I have been highlighting recently the reduction in the branch footprint across regional Australia. But now I can also share data from our surveys which highlights the fact that in fact more regional Australians need to use branches, and yet they're the very ones being disadvantaged by the removal of these branches. So today I'm going to walk through the latest data from our surveys. I've embedded some specific questions recently which really get to the heart of the matter. So we start with the question of, have you used a branch in the past year? And I've looked at data across regional Australia, suburban Australia, and those in the central business district and in the immediate surrounds thereof. And over the last year, 38% of Australians across regional Australia have had cause to use a branch. In the suburban areas, it's 21%, and in those in central areas, including central business districts, it was down to 18%. So you can immediately see that in regional Australia, branches are much more used. Now, we then asked a question about the purpose of going into the branch. And about 6% of those in regional Australia attended a branch to apply for a loan, whereas 36% went there to pay in cash, and that of course included a lot of small businesses, and 42% went into a branch to withdraw cash, and 17% to deal with customer support related issues, so for example changing details or getting other help, including fraud. Now, if I look in suburban areas, 22% went into a branch to apply for a loan, 24% went in to pay cash, and 36% withdrew cash. 19% went in for customer support related issues. And in the CBDs, 25% went in to apply for a loan, 22% paid in cash, 29% went in to withdraw cash, and 25% went in for customer support related issues. And by the way, it is conceivable that people went in for more than one purpose, and we counted each of those purposes as a separate count in the survey. Now, in our next survey snapshot, we look at the question of, has your local branch reduced hours or closed in the past 12 months? And in regional Australia, 32% reduced hours in the last year, 18% closed branches while other remain in the same local area, 33% removed ATMs in their area, and 13% left no service in the communities, or in other words, their last branch standing and they closed the last branch. And 6% said there was no change over the past 12 months. In suburban areas, 22% reported reduced hours, 12% reported closed branches while others remained locally, 27% reported removals of ATMs, and 2% said that there was no service left in the community. Whereas in no change, 37% in suburban areas. If we then look at the CBD and surrounding areas, 13% reduced hours, 7% said closed branches while other remain, 14% removed ATMs, no said that there was no service left in the community at all, and 67% said there was no change. So if you're close to the centre of town, 67%, if you're in the regional area, only 6% said there was no change over the last year, and of course all those changes were to the detriment of local communities and households and businesses. And then we looked also at where the service was withdrawn, what happened. Firstly, in regional Australia, only 3% got adequate notice. Now, adequate was defined by the respondent. 16% in suburban centres said they got adequate notice, whereas 46% said in the central areas they got adequate notice. But of course the changes were much smaller there. The second question was, well, can you use online as a substitution? And online requires two things: the services to be available online, and secondly, adequate internet or other forms of connectivity. Only 4% in the regional areas said that they actually had online substitution that worked. In suburban areas it was 16%, and in the central areas it's 28%. Let's talk about notice. So how much notice did you get? Only 52%, more than half, said they got no notice at all. They didn't know that this was happening and suddenly found that the branch had gone. 31% in suburban centres said the same, whereas 18% in the central area said the same. But again, only small numbers of closures are there. And finally, we asked a question about being forced to travel significantly to access bank services. Now, significantly is defined differently in regional, suburban and central areas because, of course, in regional areas, people are used to travelling much further. But nevertheless, 40% said that they are now forced to travel significantly, and in many cases that was more than 100 kilometres round trip just to access banking services. In the suburban areas it was 38%, but there the round trip was closer to 15 kilometres, and in the central business district 9%, and there the round trip was 5 kilometres, not least because people quite often didn't have means of transport other than public transport, or indeed used to walk or cycle. So if you stand back and think about this, you can see that there's a massive contrast between the way that the banks have been treating regional Australians and those closer to our urban centres. They're closing branches faster, they are removing ATMs faster, and they're making it much harder for people to do their banking other than online. And yet, those very communities have less access to those services, less access to online services, and have much higher demand for both cash in and cash out. So essentially what we're seeing here, based on these results, is a two-speed Australia. The banks are, I think, assuming that regional Australians behave precisely the same way as those in the urban centres. But in fact, of course, that is not true. They have different access to online services, they have different needs, they have a much greater need to use and handle cash, and yet it's those very areas where banks are closing branches like there's no tomorrow. This is disgraceful and it needs to be stopped. Now, of course, using a postal bank might be a solution, but that's going to take some time to go. In the meantime, we believe that this process needs to halt, and we should have a deep look at this. In fact, of course, Senator Rennick spoke about this in Parliament. I wrote with Dale Webster to the Parliament asking for an inquiry and insisting that meantime branch closures stop, because what's happening at the moment is unconscionable. So, yet more evidence. If you feel strongly about it, contact your MPs, write to your senators and make a fuss, because once a branch is gone, it's gone, and regional Australians are being very badly done by our banks at the moment. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.